The Sudanese Civil War erupted in 1983, fueled by ethnic, religious, and economic tensions between the predominantly Muslim North and the Christian animist South. Over 2 million people died, and 4 million were displaced, making it one of the deadliest conflicts in modern African history. The war devastated infrastructure, crippled the economy, and left countless families torn apart. Children, often the most vulnerable, became unintended targets in this brutal struggle for power and resources. Rebel groups, including the Sudan People's Liberation Army (SPLA), systematically targeted children for recruitment. Lacking resources and manpower, they exploited children's vulnerability and malleability. Boys as young as 7 were abducted from villages, schools, and refugee camps. Girls were often forced into roles as cooks, cleaners, or wives for commanders. An estimated 20,000 children were conscripted during the war, their innocence sacrificed for military gain. Rebel leaders employed sophisticated psychological tactics to indoctrinate children. They exploited trauma, using violence to break resistance, then offered a sense of belonging and purpose. Children were told they were fighting for freedom, justice, or religion. Some were given drugs to suppress fear and increase aggression. This systematic brainwashing transformed children into compliant soldiers, often making them more ruthless than adults in combat situations. The forced abduction of children created generational trauma in Sudanese communities. Rebels often staged nighttime raids, burning homes and killing resisting parents to instill terror. In some cases, children were forced to kill family members as initiation rites. Villages lost entire cohorts of young people, crippling future development. The psychological scars on both abducted children and those left behind remain profound decades later. Isolated jungle camps became horrific training grounds where children were brutalized into soldiers. Days began before sunrise with grueling physical drills. Trainers used starvation, beatings, and solitary confinement to enforce obedience. Children practiced with wooden guns before graduating to real weapons. Many died during training from malnutrition, disease, or disciplinary executions. Survivors describe these camps as places where childhood was systematically erased. Child soldiers were deliberately deployed in high-casualty frontline roles. Their small size made them effective scouts and tunnel fighters. Commanders considered them expendable, often sending them ahead to trigger landmines. Some children became infamous for their brutality, a psychological consequence of their trauma. International observers reported battalions where 80% of fighters were under 15, carrying weapons taller than themselves into battle. Surviving child soldiers bore deep psychological wounds. Many struggled with moral injury, guilt over actions committed under duress. Nightmares, substance abuse, and violent outbursts were common. Some couldn't remember their families or villages. Post-war studies showed 90% exhibited PTSD symptoms. The trauma extended to communities, as former child soldiers often faced stigma and rejection when trying to return home. Global awareness grew in the 1990s, leading to UN Security Council resolutions condemning child soldier use. NGOs like UNICEF established demobilization programs, though these were often underfunded. The 2000 optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child set 18 as the minimum combat age. However, enforcement remained weak, and many rebel groups continued the practice with minimal consequences. Rehabilitation programs faced immense challenges. Many former child soldiers had missed years of education and lacked civilian skills. Some struggled to adjust to peaceful routines after years of combat conditioning. Innovative approaches emerged, like trauma counseling through art and farming cooperatives to rebuild communities. Success stories were often bittersweet. One man relearned his native language at 25 after a decade with rebels. Today, South Sudan's independence hasn't erased the war's scars. Many former child soldiers, now in their 30s and 40s, struggle with unemployment and trauma. Some have become activists against child soldiering. The war's legacy persists in literature and art by survivors. Experts warn that without proper reconciliation, cycles of violence could continue, as traumatized generations raise children amid instability.